Ryan Day has been the most consistent head coach in the Big Ten since 2019 when he took over Ohio State from Urban Meyer. Ryan Day has 2 Big Ten titles, 3 playoff appearances, and even 1 playoff win, as well as a couple Rose Bowls victories. Ohio State comes in this year looking like one of the best teams in the country. However, I have some reasons why Ohio State will lose at least 2 games this season. Probably the biggest reason right now, Michigan. Michigan's dominance in the Big Ten has kind of been concerning if you are an Ohio State fan. But really, as a college football fan, this came out of nowhere after a horrible season in 2020 for Michigan. A lot of people thought Jim Harbaugh was, not only on the hot seat, but on his way out of Michigan. And oh, by the way, he comes out of nowhere, wins the Big Ten in 2021, does the same last year, and really has dominated Ohio State on both lines of scrimmage these past 2 seasons. Now, I think Ohio State's offensive line itself is getting worse. It will not be as good as what it was last year. Quarterback change, but again, C.J. Stroud was an elite quarterback. But look at these wide receivers, running backs, the skill set. I mean, the talent is obviously there. And their defense was pretty good last year. Ohio State's defense was pretty good until the last 3 games, really. But they're still gashing up the middle. They're still getting gashed up the middle against Michigan, which is the most concerning thing. Now, the first half of both games, Ohio State didn't really play bad, especially last year. Ohio State shut down the run. They gave up 11 yards in the first half on the ground against Michigan. Michigan had 2 big plays, and that's pretty much it. And Ohio State was only up by 3. Turn around into the second half, and Michigan completely dominated Ohio State. The game was sideways since the first possession that Michigan had the ball. Michigan is going to be really, really good this year, going to have an awesome offensive line. Obviously, Blake Corum, he'll be back, and he didn't even play last year. And then Donovan Edwards, probably the most underrated back and could be the entire country. Really, J.J. McCarthy, I think he's going to have a better season than what he was last year. And then, obviously, their defense is going to be borderline elite. Ohio State now has to climb a mountain when it comes to Michigan. And oh, by the way, this is the first time Ohio State is actually an underdog in the preseason. Michigan is right now a 2.5-point favorite, not big at all, against Ohio State. Like I said, this is one of the first times in a very long time that Ohio State's actually been an underdog in a game in the preseason. Michigan's scheme and philosophy is built to beat Ohio State. Until proven otherwise, Michigan will win this game. Another reason is their schedule. This is Ohio State, one of Ohio State's toughest schedules that they've had in a long time. Week 1, you go at Indiana. Say what you want about Indiana. Indiana's not going to be a great team, but I think they're going to be much better than what people think. The spread on that game is minus 28.5, I think. I'm going to take Indiana in the points. I don't think Indiana's going to be that bad. They got a huge transfer class and probably one of the most talented QBs that they've had in a while. And that's including Michael Penix. They got a transfer from Tennessee, Taven Jackson. But then moving on, you play at Notre Dame. That's going to be a tough game regardless. Say what you want about Notre Dame. How about that game got a lot of hype last year in the preseason. It was a top 5. It was supposed to be a top 5 matchup. Notre Dame didn't obviously end up being a top 5 team, but a lot of hype. Ohio State was heavily favored. A lot of people thought that Ohio State was going to put up a lot of points in this game. Ended up really getting dominated in the first half. Notre Dame pretty much outplayed you until halfway through the third quarter. Then Ohio State's talent just started to ride on. But if Notre Dame had a half decent QB in that game, they probably would have won. They just outplayed Ohio State for more than half of that game. Oh, by the way, they bring in Sam Hartman. That's the missing piece for Notre Dame. They have a really elite offensive line, one of the best tackles in college football as well. Some decent running backs. Like I said, some decent wide receivers as well. But Sam Hartman has the ability to not only have a great season, but to make these wide receivers look much better. Look what he did at Wake Forest. And then that middle section of your schedule, Maryland at Purdue, Penn State, then at Wisconsin. That's a pretty tough stretch, especially with how good Penn State's going to be. If you haven't watched my Penn State, 5 reasons why Penn State is going to win the Big Ten, go ahead and check that out. But that Penn State team is 1,000% going to be a top 10 team this year. Wisconsin has a lot of potential to be pretty good. And then, obviously, Minnesota, and then we already talked about Michigan. Another reason is I believe you are actually going to lose to another team than Michigan, than just Michigan. I have you losing to Notre Dame. Like I briefly said, Notre Dame's going to have one of the best offensive lines in all of college football. Joe Alt, most notable tackle for Notre Dame. They got Correll, Blake Fisher. They got some really, really, really good offensive line talent. They always usually have a really good offensive line. Oh, by the way, they lost Michael Mayer, tight end, but they always seem to have really good tight ends. Mitchell Evans is going to be up there as well. Wide receiving core, it is what it is for Notre Dame, but like Sam Hartman did at Wake Forest, I think he's going to make these wide receivers better. I like Deion Colsey. I think he'll be relatively good this year. Chris Tyree, slot wide receiver, really, really, really fast. Had that big play against Ohio State in the first play of last year. And then their running backs, Estime is going to be pretty good. Notre Dame fans are kind of high on Jadarian Price, I believe. He was a freshman last year, redshirted. And then they got a couple transfer backs. But this defense is going to be lights out. This Notre Dame team just got better and better throughout the season. Really, after midway through the season, they started to change the corner. And then we saw them against Clemson, absolutely manhandled Clemson, and finished the year, I think, 7-1 in their last 8 games. This Notre Dame team competed really for the entire game against Ohio State. Now, Ohio State was wearing down Notre Dame because Notre Dame simply just could not move the ball at all. Notre Dame had like 200-ish yards, but they had 100 like in the first quarter or something like that. And they only were able to score 10 points. Ohio State's defense played really, really well, but it's more of the fact that Tyler Buchner played horrible. But now, like I said, Sam Hartman, that's the missing piece. He will make these wide receivers look better. This offense is going to be more functional, and this defense is going to hold Ohio State under 30. Listen, if you are able to hold Ohio State under 30, you have a great chance of winning. That's obvious. Ohio State's defense, they're built to pretty much shut down teams, unlike Notre Dame. When Ohio State faces a team with an equal or even better offensive line to their defensive line, Ohio State struggles. Just look what happened to Michigan. I think that's a similar game plan that Marcus Freeman is going to have, just like Michigan and even Georgia did last year, with how great both offensive lines played pretty much in the second half. And I think Notre Dame's going to win this game. It's going to be a lower scoring game, I think. But I do believe Sam Hartman is going to make enough plays, and Notre Dame wins a 27-24 type game, maybe 24-20, maybe even 30-27. But Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to win them this game. Another team that is going to give Ohio State a lot of problems is Penn State. Penn State is definitely good enough to beat Ohio State. Last year, that game was a weird game. Penn State was pretty much outplaying Ohio State, at least in my opinion. They had the lead up until that fourth quarter, where Ohio State went on like a 28-0 run in like a 5, 6, 7 minute span. It was crazy. Penn State ended up losing that game by 13. But after that demoralizing pick six, I mean, the game was pretty much over. But this is a new year. No Sean Clifford, Drew Aller. Drew Aller's the key for Penn State winning this game. Yes, I said a lot about the running backs. The running backs are really, 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 really good. Came out of nowhere. One of the worst rush offensive teams in 2021. Turns out they were one of the best in 2022. What a big turnaround. You got Manny Diaz at defensive coordinator. He needs to step it up in this game. But that pass rush for Penn State will be better this year, as well as that insane DB core. Penn State will definitely give Ohio State a lot of problems this year and is good enough. And then finally, Minnesota and Wisconsin are going to give Ohio State a run for their money. Wisconsin brings in, obviously, Tanner Mordecai, but most importantly, Luke Fickell, one of the hottest names in college football as a head coaching hire last year. They bring him in, return one of the best running backs in the entire country, Braylon Allen. And Wisconsin, they're going to have a really good defense. But Minnesota, team not a lot of people are talking about. They lost Tanner Morgan, but Minnesota fans are really, really high on this Kalkamakis guy. He has a lot more talent than Tanner Morgan. His ceiling is way higher. And Minnesota's wide receiving core is kind of underrated. They still have Chris Ottman-Bell, went out and got Crooms, and then Elijah Spencer as well, two transfer wide receivers who are going to be pretty good. They got Sean Tyler, running back from Western Michigan. They still bring back Bryce Williams, who has a lot of experience. Their front seven should be relatively good. Their defensive backs kind of a question mark, but they went out in the transfer portal and got a couple guys. This Minnesota team is going to be really, really good. And oh, by the way, you play them right before Michigan. That could be kind of a letdown situation like Maryland was last year, and even a couple years ago. You played Maryland, I think in 2018 before Michigan. Ended up nearly losing, and then last year you nearly lost to Maryland. So this Minnesota team could play spoiler, and so could Wisconsin. Overall, with this schedule and how Ohio State is going to be this year, I think this team will lose 2 games. Like I said, I have you losing to Notre Dame and Michigan. I wouldn't be surprised if you lost to Penn State. I wouldn't be surprised if you lost to Wisconsin. I would kind of be surprised if you did lose to Minnesota. I know where that game is playing, but I am a little bit worried about, like I said, their defensive backs. But hey, like I said, Minnesota's going to be a really, really good team. Overall, 9-3 or 10-2 for Ohio State this year. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Ohio State's going to go 12-0, win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, most importantly, get over that hump, and then make the playoffs and win some playoff games? Or do you think Ohio State's a little bit overrated and you think they're going to go 9-3 or 10-2 like me? Let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.